Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Literacy series. We are absolutely delighted to have Joseph kicking this off for us with this session on Build Your Own Legal Bot. We're going to have joining us today Sam Flynn, who is one of the founders of Joseph, and also delighted to say a good friend of the centre. Thank you, Sam. And, you know, even serves on our advisory board as well. So it's great to see you, Sam. Thank you very much for doing this for us. And Henry Ho, also from Joseph. Thank you, Henry, who is one of their IT gurus. He's going to be joining as well to work with us on this session, a really exciting session too. Great to have you, everyone. And again, great to have you, Sam and Henry. And I'm going to go off screen now and hand it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Terry, for that lovely introduction. It's equally exciting to be here as part of CLI's first event for the Digital Literacy series this year, and to see all of you. We had an extraordinary response from all of the attendees, which is really exciting way to kick off the year. Before we make a start, or we'll give it a couple more minutes as people are still coming in, what I would love you to do while we wait is confirm in the chat whether you've been able to log into your Joseph account. If you haven't, reach out to support@josephlegal.com and our support team will help you. We're not going to start using the account for the first 15-20 minutes probably, so you've got time to log in and set all of that up. The second question is maybe a bit more abstract, and that is, if you could automate one thing in your daily life, what would it be? And we've had Antoinette has responded, and so if everyone else could start responding, that would be great. So I'll get us started. And Rosie's not quite sure what you're going to automate. Henry Ho is going to automate cooking. Awesome. Jean is automating answers to FAQs. I would automate choosing what to cook, I think. And we've got some wonderful ideas for work, things you want to automate at work, but also think about things you might just want to automate in your day-to-day life. So anything, choosing what to cook, responding to emails. Henry's got cooking as well. Caring for my kids as well. We've got in the Q&A. I love it. Responses to my children's questions. Good one, Tiffany. Maybe we can build a bot for your children today. First up, welcome to the session where we are going to learn how to build our very own legal bot in an hour. It's quite an ambitious session. I was just talking to Terry beforehand. We've got to get through quite a lot. And this is the kind of thing, you know, that traditionally you'd learn over a very long program. Whereas today we're trying to squash it into your lunch break. So wish me luck. But we're going on an adventure together, so I think it'll be fine. First up, I think a great place to start for all of these sorts of sessions is why are we here? Why are we talking about legal bots? And more broadly, why are we talking about legal technology and automation? I know a number of you who are attending today are certainly converts and don't need to be convinced of the relevance of technology and automation and innovation, but I still think it's a nice place to start and a nice way to frame the work that we're going to do together today. For us at Joseph, there are three key reasons why legal teams, organizations, firms, etc., work with Joseph and build bots on Joseph. The first is this one. So 5 billion people across the world have unmet justice needs. In Australia, every year 4 million people have a legal problem and they don't get help of any kind. This is sort of my introduction to the world of legal tech. So for those of you who don't know my background, my name is Sam. As Terry said, I'm COO and co-founder of Joseph. And I was for a number of years a lawyer. So I worked in commercial litigation at Arnold Bloch Leibler. I also worked as a regulatory and commercial lawyer at Hive Legal for a number of years. My first foray into the world of legal technology and legal bots, which we're going to learn about today, was me and a friend built a very simple but cool looking web-based app called Mikey Finds almost 5 years ago now, which is wild. And it told people what to do if they got caught without a valid ticket when they were on a tram or a train in Victoria. It doesn't sound like a very, moral fight, but it was at the time. There were lots of unfair laws and lots of problems with the system. That was a wild success. We had thousands and thousands of users, and the government ended up changing the laws to make them fairer. And that for me was when I fell in love with the world of legal technology. And that's why I was drawn to start Josef, which is the mission being essentially that we could let anyone, like all of the people on this call or in this webinar, build and launch their own legal bots to do that kind of work and to make legal services more accessible. So that's point number one of why legal tech is important and why it's relevant to our work as legal professionals. Point two is probably slightly more relevant to those of you who are working in the commercial space, as I know a number of you are from your registrations. Only 40% of consumers are satisfied with the legal services they receive. Lots of people in the legal profession, in the industry, are turning towards legal technology like legal bots to improve the client experience. I'm sure all of your clients are very satisfied with the work that you do, but as a general proposition, this is a problem that we need to address. And the third reason is this one, which is probably a little bit scary for some people, but hopefully for those of us here on in the webinar today, not too scary. 25% of legal work can be automated, as estimated by McKinsey. That obviously changes depending on the kind of work that you do. But the reason why I find that kind of an inspiring statistic or an exciting statistic rather than a depressing one is that it means that if we can get rid of that lower level mundane work, it allows us to focus on the more high value strategic work that we're all trained to do, whether as lawyers or as people supporting lawyers, legal professionals, etc. So those are the three sort of key reasons why we're here. I'm sure all of you have your own reasons for being here today. I know some of them, were to do with professional development or learning a bit more about what your employer is doing or learning about new technology. But have a think about why you're here today and what it is you want to get out of the session. With that, I want to move on to what we're actually doing together today. So there will be three steps, I suppose, in today's presentation. The first is that we're going to learn. We're going to learn the different steps involved in building out a legal bot. I should warn you or put a caveat on that we're not going to learn, obviously, every single aspect of building a legal bot. There's lots that goes into it, but we're going to learn the basics. So all of the fundamentals of how to identify opportunities for building a legal bot, how to go about structuring the bot, how to go about building it, and what happens after that. Because once you've built the bot, that's not the end of the journey. For a lot of people, that's actually the start of the journey. So we're going to learn all of those different steps. We're going to then build together. So this is going to be a pretty hands-on session. I will show you how to do something, and then I'm going to ask you to do it. Finally, we're going to share what we built at the end. Now, this is if time permits, but what I would love for us to do, if what you've built isn't super confidential or you're not, embarrassed by it, although you shouldn't be, we're going to share those bots throughout the webinar so that people can click on them and see what other people have built. Some of you at this point might be wondering what Josef is. And what a bot is as well. I mean, I hope some of you are aware of the terminology, but if you're not, we'll cover that off now. So Josef is what is called a legal automation platform. So we license the product, we give the product to legal organizations around the world, and big ones, global law firms to small firms as well. So really across the gamut of the profession. To allow them to automate parts of their day-to-day work. The platform that you'll use, that hopefully all of you have had a chance to log into now, is designed to be super easy to use. It is what we call no code. The reason why we designed it to be that way is because, particularly as ex-legal professionals, so ex-lawyers and people who worked in the legal profession more broadly, it remains our strong conviction that you are the people who hold the expertise required to be able to build great legal bots or build great digital tools. And so for those of you who are not technically minded, which is a lot of the legal profession, let's be honest, we needed to build something that was super easy to use. And hopefully that proves true when you start building out your bots today. What do you actually build on Josef? What is the end result? You end up building what are called legal bots. So for those of you not familiar with the terminology, a bot is a software application that automates a legal task rather. And so a legal bot is a software application that automates a legal task. There have been thousands and thousands of bots built on Josef that have helped tens of thousands of people solve legal problems. Those bots do lots of different things. So they're in every area of the law, from environmental law to bankruptcy to complex financial transactions. But broadly, you can probably categorize them into the work that they do or the tasks that they do. Those 4 things that Josef bots do are collecting information from people, so intake and triage, client interviews, for example, providing information to people, so automated guidance and advice, drafting documents, so agreements and letters and forms, and workflow automation as well. So for example, sending information to people, sending notifications, sending emails. So those are sort of the 4 key things. And I think when you're starting to conceptualize what a bot is, thinking about the work that they do or the tasks that they do can be really helpful for people who are learning about it for the first time. These are some of the organizations that we are lucky enough to work with. I like to include this slide for a couple of reasons. One is obviously to show off that we get to work with all these amazing organizations, and we're a startup based in Australia. The other is to say that this is really an industry-wide or profession-wide movement. So no matter where you are in your career or what area of the legal profession that you work in, this is not just a Josef thing, it's not just a CLI thing, it is what all leading and innovative teams are doing globally to improve the way that they work. So we're in good company today, which is good to know. What do the bots actually look like? Some of you may never have seen a Josef bot before. I picked out 3 to show you today, although there's obviously lots and lots to pick from. If you are interested in seeing others as well, you can go into our website, joseflegal.com, and we've got lots in our blog to give you ideas about what you might build, whether on Josef or wherever. The 3 bots that I wanted to show you today were, one was one of those legal guidance and advice bots that I was talking about before. Minter Ellison has built a fantastic one. It built a fantastic one last year that it built out over time to answer questions in relation to COVID-19 regulations. So if we go through and interact with this bot, you can see that it's a conversational bot. So it sends a message to me and I send a message back. We then progress through and we come to what we call sort of a triage question. So what are you interested in? Employment, finance, exposure, updates, something else. And then we click our way through to get to the answer to the question that we might have. So that was a fantastic example from Minter Ellison last year, which I think they won some awards for as well, which is really cool. That did some good in the world, and also obviously helped with marketing and BD and all those kinds of things. The second one I wanted to show you was from Clifford Chance. This particular bot was built, or this series of bots rather, was built in the Clifford Chance Singapore office. And they are in the category of document automation bots. So this particular set of bots automates the production of documents for startups or scale-ups in Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific, and particularly they are early stage financing documents. So if we click in the same way that we did for the Minter Ellison bot, we can have a conversation. It spits out a non-disclosure agreement, or a Series A term sheet, or coming soon, a convertible agreement. One of the greatest things about Josef, which we'll see later today, is the ability to simply just drag and drop a Microsoft Word document, populate it, and then spit it out, and it looks exactly the same. And that's been a real challenge in the bot building and doc automation space for a long time. And we spent a lot of time and effort on it, and have come out with something pretty exciting. The final one I wanted to show you was one that's was again built last year by a community organization called Social Security Rights Victoria here in Victoria. I'm based in Melbourne, and they worked with Paper Giant, which is a design agency down here, to build out a medical evidence bot. And after a lot of research and study, they figured out that trying to get a disability support pension was super challenging in lots of ways, but particularly when they were trying to get evidence from their doctors about the nature and extent of their disability. And so what they built along with this design agency was a bot that would help the end user and the doctor work together in a session to come up with the evidence required. The reason why that was super important is obviously to get it right, but because if they sent it in and got it wrong, there'd be another 3-month delay to getting their disability support pension, which for disadvantaged or vulnerable people can be obviously pretty terrible for them. So those are 3 nice examples of bots that I wanted to show you. There are lots of others, which again, as I said earlier, you can read about more on the website. But what I encouraged you all to do before today's session as well was to think about what it was that you wanted to build for today. And that can be today or going forward. If we move though into building our own bot, so we know what Josef is, we know what bots are, we've seen some examples of what other legal teams have built. The first thing we need to do, step 1, is choosing what it is that we want to automate. I gave you all that challenge yesterday and earlier today for some of you, and it can be a really, really hard thing to do, looking around at all of the work we do on a day-to-day basis and saying, what can I turn into an automated bot? What processes, what tasks can I automate? How's it going to sit into the broader system, etc. Where we encourage people to start is with this question, which is obviously a very broad question, but this came from Margaret Hagan, who is the director of the Legal Design Lab at Stanford University and a friend of ours. And when I caught up with her a couple of years ago now, when she was last in Australia, she kept saying this sentence or this question over and over, which was, what could be better? And that's what she encourages the firms and the teams that she works with that's how she encourages them to think about the way that they work and how to improve what they want to do. So looking at our work product, whether that is sending emails, drafting memorandums, meetings, etc., and asking ourselves what could be better about the work that I do. The specific example that she gave was working with a large firm in the United States and encouraged them to sit down with their clients to ask their clients what could be better about the work products. And that was from the answers that they got from the client was, really big things that they might want to change, down to really little things like turning PowerPoint presentations like today's into a little placemat that the clients could come in and see all of the relevant information, tick boxes, make decisions, etc. And that was, something that they thought could be improved. How does that relate to automation? Obviously, we need to think about, those things, those tasks, those processes that we want to improve in the context of what it is that we're actually doing. But starting broad is a really great place to discover the problems that we want to solve and to explore the solutions to those problems as well. And so for Margaret Hagan, who is a proponent of legal design, if you're not familiar with that, I encourage you to look it up. That whole process is about going broad, being really creative, open-minded, and then closing. So trying to pick the right answers that have come up during that process. One of the tools that we have at our disposal to come up with these ideas is the idea of analogous inspiration. Analogous inspiration is a tool that legal designers use to help us come up with ideas for things we might want to automate. An example is in the medical profession or the medical industry in the United States. A hospital wanted to figure out how to improve the way that they manage surgical equipment. And so they looked at Formula One pit stops to draw lessons to apply to that management of surgical tools and surgical equipment. if we take an example from today's session, so I asked all of you to identify things that you want to automate in your day-to-day life. Someone in the Q&A had written back, I think, raising children or looking after children. And so if we were to dig into that, what is it that you want to automate about raising children? It might be that it's tiring or it's frustrating, or sometimes it gets a little bit repetitive. I don't want to read too much into that answer. If we have a look at some of the others, Rosie has said housework. Again, it's kind of repetitive. It's kind of mundane. For me, I chose choosing what to cook, particularly during lockdown in Melbourne. That became a very repetitive, mundane task. And so again, you're starting to see a pattern here, right? It's kind of a simple one and kind of a trite one, but important that we can say in our day-to-day life, those are the things we want to automate. So how do we identify the things in our work life that we want to automate? What are the things that are repetitive, or what are the things that are mundane or a little bit boring, or that we think could be done better through automation as well? So that's kind of one of the tools that we have as legal designers. We're not going to go through everything today, but I think it's a nice sort of thought experiment to demonstrate what those tools do for us when we're trying to identify opportunities for automation and what it is that we want to build. For us as well, we have obviously seen thousands of bots at Josef. The most likely to be successful satisfy 4 criteria, and they are that they automate a task that is frequent, that is repetitive, so that is somewhat simple. We're not going to automate, a really complex memorandum of advice, but we might automate a simpler agreement. Automating processes that are valuable or more important to us is another big one. And finding processes that are user-centric. So we don't want to build bots that people don't want to use. We want to build things that are solving problems for our end users. So that's step 1. And you can probably start to get a sense of the challenge of getting through all of this today, but I promise we'll try. Choosing what it is that we want to build. And hopefully, and it looks like a lot of you have already come up with ideas for the prototype you want to build today, which is great. So once we've done that, and this is where we start building our bots together, we need to start to identify the variables that we're going to need to know in order to build out our bot. And for anyone not familiar with that terminology, a variable in a very non-scientific definition is the information we need to know in order to automate a particular task. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. Today, I'm going to automate an employment agreement with you all. And as I said, I'm going to do a few steps on Josef, and then I'm going to ask you to do it yourself, but with your own bot. This is just a template employment agreement that has Josef branding on it. The variables, when we're doing a doc automation bot, which is what I'm going to do here today, it's actually quite easy to identify them, because in a template document, which a lot of us in the legal profession are quite used to working in, those variables are often identified with like square brackets, employee full name, insert date, etc. Here, do you want the right to drug and alcohol test someone? So those are the kinds of variables that we need to know in order to produce a finalized version of this employment agreement. So we could just start building in Josef straight away. What I encourage people to do though is do a bit of planning first. Some people like to just start building. In my mind, I like to plan. That's how I work. You'll have to find your own way to work. But that could be as simple as literally grabbing these variables and dropping them into another document, or having a notepad beside you, or drawing out, a decision tree or a map before you make a start on building. The reason why I think that's advisable is it lets us do 2 things. One is it lets us make sure that, we're not asking for the same information over and over again. The second is that it allows us to order this information so that we're going to ask for it from the end user in a really logical way, and in a way that satisfies UX design principles, which I'll talk about a bit towards the end. This is kind of the process in the abstract. What does that look like in Josef? if we navigate our way to the Josef dashboard, which hopefully you've all had a chance to log into, if we wanted to start creating a bot that drafted this employment agreement, we would click into this drop down at the top, and you won't have any bots in here. These are just the bots in my account. Scroll to the bottom and click create bot. Once I do that, I give it a name. So I'm going to call it employment agreement bot and click create. And once I do that, I'm then taken to the bot itself. Once I'm in the bot, I can get access to these 6 tabs down the left-hand side, which is where I start to build it out and start to create it. The first tab I'm in is the details tab, which is where we give the bot a name and we can describe it as well. So something like, this bot will help you draft an employment agreement. Then we want to start identifying those variables and asking for that information or those variables from the end user. How do we do that? We navigate our way to flowchart and we start building out that map. And this is where we really start building out the content of the bot. So what it's going to say to the end user in order to get the information from the end user to fill out the document. The first variable that we want to know here, as per our little very rough plan, is the date. What is the date of the agreement? So I'm going to navigate to flowchart and add my first message. When I click on add message, a sidebar will appear and I need to do 3 things. I need to give that message a name. So we're going to call it date, and that's just for my reference. The end user doesn't see that. And then we type our message text. So literally, what is the bot going to say to the end user? What is the date of the agreement? Then the third thing we have to do is choose our content type. And the content type sets the parameters for that message, right? So if I choose free text, the end user can respond with text. Or if I choose numbers, they can only respond with numbers. Similarly, date. There are lots of different content types here, but for present purposes, we're just going to pick date and click create. And then we've got our first message. Next thing we want to do is work our way through all of those variables. And the next one's going to be full name. And we just do that same thing again. So we click on the first message, get the option to connect a new message. Let's call it full name. What is the employee's full name? Choose a full name content type and click create. And then we have our first 2 messages. If we want to test that we got that right, we can click preview. What is the date of the agreement? Let's say it's next month. What is the employee's full name? And so we've already started building out our bot by figuring out the information we need to know from the end user to get to our conclusion, which here is drafting an agreement, but for you might be different. So now I'm going to throw my first challenge to all of you, and that is to log into your account and create a new bot and create at least 2 messages. So let's move on to the next challenge, which Catherine has perfectly prefigured with her question. Once we've done step 2, which is identifying all those variables and starting to ask the end user to give us that information. So in exactly the same way as we would in a client interview, or if we're trying to answer a question or create a document or send an email, we need to get the information or the variables first. Once we've done that, we just need to start mapping it out. And in a way, we've already started doing that, right? So date goes first, full name goes second, probation period goes third. But what happens when, as Catherine has suggested, we need to actually show different people different messages, or we need to get different information from different people based on their circumstances? What that looks like in reality is, not coincidentally, my example is going to be in relation to a probation period. If we scroll all the way to the bottom of this template document, or to our little schedule at the end, item number 4 in the schedule says, insert probation period months from the commencement date. So if there is a probation period for an end user, we need to know, or for an employee, I suppose, then we want to know how many months that probation period is going to go for. But if we don't want a probation period for a particular employee, if you just want to start, the employment without that, we don't need to know how many months the probation period is going to go for, because that doesn't make any sense, and the end user or the user is not going to be able to answer that question. So how do we go about mapping and branching in a decision tree to make sure that that works in the way that we want it to? What we use on Josef is what we call rules. So we need to still do step 2, which is add the variables. So here we need to figure out whether we want a probation period. So this should be, do you want a probation period for full name, so Sam Flynn. Then if the end user answers yes to that message, we want to ask them something like probation period length. So how long is the probation period for? We could make this a text type message, so they could just respond with free text. I think for a legally consequential message of this kind, multiple choice is your friend, because it reduces the scope for error. So in the possible responses, I could type 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and click create. The problem here is that everyone is going to see probation period. So they're going to be asked the question, do you want a probation period? And then no matter what they answer to that message, they're going to be asked, how long is the probation period for? But we only want to show people who answer yes to this question, the answer to this question here. So the way that we do that is we jump into the relevant connection. We do that by clicking on what we call the rules cog to add a rule. And the rule determines when an end user will go from the first message to the second message. To add that rule into that connection, we click add rule, and we build out the content of the rule. The content of the rule has 3 parts. So it has, we have to pick the relevant message. We have to pick the relevant operation. So for multiple choice, is not, for numbers, more than, less than, etc. And we need to pick the relevant response. So the message is called probation period. The answer that we want is yes, because we only want someone to be sent to probation period length if they've said yes, they do want a probation period. The problem though here, and we can see this if we click on preview, is if I get to that point and say, what is the employee's full name? Sam Flynn. Do you want a probation period? No. The bot is broken because we haven't given anywhere for that end user to go. So the way that we do that is we need to add another message coming off probation period. If I click on probation period, I can then connect another message here, and let's just call this for the moment placeholder. Create. And then I just need to add the opposite rule in this connection, which is going to be probation period is no. And now if they answer no to this message, they'll come here. And if they answer yes, they'll come here. Catherine, does that answer your question? The other question I had there, which is actually a really timely one from Chelsea, was you've changed some stuff at the beginning of the interaction, which happens a lot. That's good, Catherine, good to see. The other thing that can happen if you're changing around the order of the messages is you'll need to get used to this connect to button. So if I just wanted to add an unconnected message here, I'm going to call this placeholder 2, create. I'll have an unconnected message at the top. If I need to connect that back into the thread, I can connect it to placeholder by selecting placeholder, clicking connect to, and connecting it to that unconnected message. And then it's going to automatically snap to grid in the place where it should sit. Hopefully that wasn't a bit too much information for everyone. And Chelsea, hopefully that answered your question a little. But making sure that you're putting the first message, you're clicking on the first message first, and then using the arrow to connect to the second message second. That's going to help you with the placement of the arrows, hopefully. What I want you to do now is, going back to these rules, is to jump back into your bot and add a rule to a connection. My hint is to use multiple choice type message, because that's going to be simpler than some of the others where it becomes a little bit more complex with the operations. The next thing we need to do though, is creating our output. So what we've done so far is we've figured out the information we need from the end user in order to do the thing that we're doing. The second step is to map it out and pull it all together in a way that makes sense for the end user. The next step is to create the actual output. So what is that going to be? For some of you, that could just be guidance and advice. So it could be sending a message saying the answer to your question is XYZ. It could be an automated notification, which we can do in Josef, which we won't cover off today. Or it could be an automated document like what we've got here. To build that out on the platform, we would, let's get rid of that message. We don't need that. We would jump in and create a new message. We're going to call it agreement. We're going to say, here is your agreement. And then we're going to choose a document type message, which here is going to be external document. Don't worry about internal, just know that you can produce documents without providing them directly to the end user. So we choose a document type message and click create. Once we've done that, we get access to this add document button. And here's the Microsoft Word version of the employment agreement. We can simply drag it over into the window. It will then convert it into a Josef document, which we can then start applying automation functionality to. I'm conscious I'm going through a lot of the Josef functionality here, but the broad proposition is that now we need to start determining where the variables are going to be input into the document and applying rules to the document as well, in much the same way as we're applying rules to the connections between messages. So to do that, what we're looking at here is like a representation of the underlying Microsoft Word document. It doesn't change it at all. We're just playing with the content at the top. What we want to do is remove our little drafting notes. And instead of having those drafting notes, we're going to just drop the variables into the relevant parts of the document. So here we're going to take out our drafting note, find the relevant message, and click insert. And so through that, in that way, we're going to go through and drop all the relevant variables into the document. If we scroll our way through to the schedule at the end, we can see here that we have the probation period row in the table. We're going to insert the number of months, so probation period length, into that part of the sentence. What we're then going to do, and this is sort of the more complex part of doc automation, is we're going to add a rule to the row. And that rule, we're going to build it in exactly the same way as we built rules between messages in those connections. The rule just does slightly different work here. The work that the rule does is it determines when this text is going to appear, or here when the row is going to appear. So the rule is going to be, if the answer to probation period is yes, remember the message probation period said, do you want a probation period? Whereas if the answer is not yes, then this row is going to be removed and the end user will be none the wiser and they won't see it. Those rules work for particular words in sentences, or for items, or for whole paragraphs or headings and whatever else. But here we're just applying it to a row in a table. We can export that document as a PDF or a Microsoft Word document. And once we're happy with it, we can then jump out, click final message, and preview again to check whether we got it right. So let's say next month again, I can be the employee. Let's say we don't want a probation period. Oh, I haven't done the connections properly, excuse me. So what we need to do here is we need to connect probation period by clicking connect to the final message. And we need to add a rule. And that rule is if the answer to probation period is no, then we'll be taken straight to the agreement. But if it's yes, then we'll be asked how long the probation period should go for. And that is a good learning moment. Even the sort of simplest logic, you can trip yourself up really easily. So preview is your best friend. We're going to constantly be testing, iterating, and fixing as we go. I like how I just turned a mistake into a teachable moment. I've clearly been doing this for a long time. So if we do that again and say no, we are taken to the agreement. We can click download. And then we will download a completed Microsoft Word version of the document. So we've got the variables inserted, the date and my name. And if we scroll all the way to the bottom, it has removed the probation period row because we don't want a probation period for this particular employee. If we'd said yes, it would leave it in, and we would have then been asked to insert the length of the probation period. Let's wrap up because we have 5 minutes to go. The point of sharing as well, I mean, it's a nice thing for us to see and to see that, you know, we've all been creative and built things in this very short session, and that's wonderful. The bigger point for me, though, is one of the things we really need to keep in mind when we're building out legal technology is making sure that we're testing it, iterating it, centering our end users, and constantly improving and maintaining the bots. It's not a sort of set and forget thing. I know that's a term we use a lot. People use a lot in legal tech. It's not about that. It's about building the best thing that we can and constantly improving on it. One part of that, and something we don't have time to talk about today, is the idea of user experience. This website, I'm going to send you the link afterwards. It's super funny to use, but it shows us what happens when we create a bad user experience. And user experience is all about building digital products that are meaningful and relevant. I'm going to skip through these and open it up for a couple of minutes to questions if people have them. Before that, I'm going to say thank you all for coming along. It was a super fun session. We had a lot to get through, obviously, but it was greatly appreciated. I know it was probably a bit more work than a usual webinar that you come to. If you have any further questions or want to reach out, you can find further information on our website, follow us at Josef Legal, or flick me an email as well. Charlie, are choices case sensitive? And can we use wildcards? Great question. The multiple choice messages are not case sensitive. But I mean, they're just going to pick the ones that you've chosen. If we're using free text, I believe it is case sensitive at the moment, but good question. We don't as well, I think something to keep in mind and something people don't often realize when they start building out a Josef bot is they're not NLP enabled. So it's all about rules-based decisions and branches in the bot. So you have complete control over where the end user is going to go. Whereas when we're training an ML-based bot, you know, there's a lot of sort of fuzzy logic and a lot more work that goes into the back end to make it happen. And there's disadvantages and advantages to both. Jean, what did you do to get the document automation part in the flowchart? Good question, Jean. You just pick a document type message. So when you add a message, as you would with all of the others you did, one of the content types is called external document, and then you get access to the add document button. And the reason for that is we're generating the documents at a particular point in the flow because it's a bot rather than another type of system. Terry, back to you.
Sam, thank you very much. I just wanted to thank you very much again, and Henry for being here today. You know, the whole purpose of this digital literacy series was to do exactly what you've demonstrated today, which is really take the fear out of technology or anything digital for that matter, and really encourage people to engage with it and get excited about it. And I think that's exactly what we've seen. The other thing is how quickly that can be done. You know, you mentioned it, Sam, but I mean, here we've been for an hour, and we've already got folks that are basically building bots. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. So, that certainly helps enormously there as well. So I would just encourage all of you, because as Sam has said, and we acknowledge that this is almost really just a taste of what could come.
Mm-hmm.
Do reach out to Sam. He'll be in contact with you as well, and all the amazing folks at Josef as well, to continue the conversation. And we hope there's lots of them. And also, I think, the other thing is get your friends and colleagues excited and energized about this as well, because you can tell them just what your experience has been today. So thank you very much again for that. So thank you, all of you, for attending, and also being so willing to share and engage in this session as well. If you'd like more information about others that are coming up, other events that are coming up, or courses in this digital literacy series, please do follow the Centre on LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter, so all the usual places. And of course, I'm going to very strongly suggest that you do likewise with Josef, that you'll find on all of those normal platforms again. So with that being said, and mindful of the time, Sam, Henry and the whole team at Josef, really delighted that you could lead this session for us, and thank you very much again for it.
You're welcome. Thanks for organising and for the invite, Terry. It was great.
And on that note, folks, bye and see you next time.